what I'm hearing is that the need to be able to maximize some of our innate human capabilities is of paramount importance for the next generation, and even for people that are going to go through this transition. When you think about a cognitive enhancer, which is ostensibly the topic of today, you think about something that might make you focus better, remember more, be able to task switch better. But if you remove a layer from there and you think this is far more important for overall humanity, for us to be able to figure out ways to optimize our mind's ability to interact with this world and to be our very best on a consistent basis. So what was the first experience that you had that motivated you to explore this space?
Well, I've been interested in human potential development and what the space of possibility was and enhancement capabilities my whole life, whether we're talking about meditation and psychotherapy, personal development, or physiology, brain chemistry. And so as far as chemistry goes, an interest in natural medicine and healthcare, biohacking, neurohacking, EEG, neurofeedback, these are just always kind of hobbies. And insofar as the topics that I was really committed to for the world required high-level cognitive capacity, continuously supporting that was an important topic. I got more acutely involved when I actually was diagnosed with some kind of mysterious autoimmune diseases that were very rapid onset and that didn't have adequate cures in the allopathic or the holistic alternative worlds, and that had a shitty prognosis. And other than physical pain, disability kinds of symptomology, they also had decreased cognitive bandwidth symptomology, which was the center of abilities that didn't work for me to lose. And so I knew that if I was going to be able to fix these issues that didn't have adequate solutions, I was going to have to figure it out. And I knew that was going to take cognitive bandwidth. So my first focus strategically was use the bandwidth that I have to focus on increasing cognitive bandwidth, then use that to figure out the underlying pathophysiology, et cetera, what's going on, and correct it, and then get back to the work. And so that led to a very deep dive in the whole topic of cognitive chemistry. And this was drugs, brain nutrients, nootropics, understanding neurotransmission optimization, et cetera. So as I was diving deep into that space and looking at what's been done well and where there are pretty significant holes, one of the big holes that I'm always wanting to look at is the topic of synthesis. Where do we have a lot of knowledge of acetylcholine's role or dopamine's role or glutamate's role or neurotrophin's role, but not the complex relationship between those or even between different aspects of the regulatory system on any of them? And so looking at how do we support many complex systems that are self-regulating to have increased regulatory capacity became the deep question for me. So synthesis there, that led to me doing work on myself where I was able to actually increase cognitive bandwidth to beyond what my previous healthy baseline had been, even while I had pathophysiology going on. And then was able to figure out underlying cause of what was going on for me, correct it, reverse autoimmune antibodies, that whole fun thing. That led to doing that with quite a few other people that had various forms of disease that didn't have adequate solution in clinical settings, and to formalizing a model of how health, aging, illness, and reversal of illness could work. There was a complex systems informed model for medicine and well-being. And so that really was a lot of things that would pertain to, but the psychoneuropharmacology, the cognitive psychological stuff was really essential because almost everyone who is dealing with complex illness has some brain fog cognitive effects and has some emotion affected by hearing that they've got incurable prognoses, and they have to have their psyche and their cognition in the right place to do everything that it takes to get better.
Right.
So focusing on that first became a central thing. So I would say that's where I went from it being a area of general interest to an area of central deep dive.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is there was a need that arose for you personally that fostered a deep dive to understand the overall system with which any possible solution would be working over your health, aging, etc. From there, then you wanted to understand not only how we might be able to utilize some sort of exogenous chemical to amplify a process, but rather how can we help make the entire mind that is doing the thinking stronger and better over time. It seemed like that was the goal.
Yes.
And then you've been working to solve that.
Yeah. The last thing that you said, I think, is absolutely central to what our goal as an organization is that when we think of psychopharmacology as a field, or really just pharmacology as a field, there are exceptions, and I don't mean to overgeneralize, but generally there is less focus on fundamental causation, and especially if it is multifactorial, right? Like we focus on cause, and we're usually quite good in Western medicine if it's an acute cause, right? Injury or acute infection or acute poisoning is quite obvious.
Right.
And so then you reverse that acute cause. But if the cause is time delayed, so it's hard to find out what it was, or it's multifactorial, there are multiple things that are involved independently, or multiple sequence steps, there's a causal cascade, it's hard to actually understand what it is. And so we'll cluster symptoms into disease names. But if we look at what was the path of the deviation from homeostasis that led to this person's MS or cancer or rheumatism, 100 different MSs have 100 different pathoetiologies.
Right.
And there are commonalities in them, but this is why personalized medicine is so critical. So generally, given that understanding cause has been difficult, the focus has largely not been on what's actually imbalanced and how do we correct it, because it's not a small number of things, right? It's usually a large number of things.
Right.
The focus has largely been, is there some kind of exogenous chemistry or treatment that we can give that will limit the symptomology or some aspect of pathogenesis? And that's better than not doing anything, but we can take the next step now. Our science, et cetera, is good enough to take the next step. And so our focus is, rather than give some exogenous external override to an internal regulatory system that is radically complex and intelligent and brilliant, let's work to understand what's actually wrong with the regulatory systems or deficient in them, and upregulate the regulatory capacity of the system so that it's fundamentally more adaptive, more resilient,